This isn't just a film about 9/11 and the wars that followed. This isn't just a film about the press and the Pentagon. It's about our world and how information is conveyed and how prejudice is fostered by deception. About how we are subjected to indoctrination and used and pitted against each other. To understand the massive military expenditures and how they are eating up so much wealth, the first hurdle we have to get over is this trust in the mass media and the stigma against the concept of conspiracy. There are a lot of strange conspiracies about many things, but that is not a reason to reject conspiracies categorically. For example, the Iran-Contra affair was a massive government conspiracy hidden from the press and public for years. It happened in my lifetime, and it involved billions of dollars in multiple countries. This was a case where one part of the government didn't even know what another part of the government was doing. Thousands of people were murdered. Multiple countries in Central America as well as Iran and Israel were involved. And yet it was kept as a total secret from the media, or perhaps by the media, for years. Not only was it possible to hide this from the public, but most of the government was unaware of the activities of a small cabal from within. Covert actions and deception in the press aren't irregular, it's normal. The continuity of government, with a compartment within the CIA, was acting on its own with other intelligence agencies for selective business interests. And it had made plans to subvert the Constitution for the Homeland Security State in the event of a disaster.
Colonel North, in your work at the NSC, were you not assigned at one time to work on plans for the continuity of government in the event of a major disaster?
Mr. Chairman.
I believe that question touches upon a highly sensitive and classified area, so may I request that you not touch upon that, sir.
The CIA, along with Zionist hawk Michael Ledeen and Iran-Contra middleman Ghorbanifar, financed their operations with illegal arms and drug sales. Opium from Laos during the Vietnam Wars in the Golden Triangle, cocaine from Central and South America, and presently opium in the Golden Crescent from Afghanistan. The black market weapons trade and the sale of illegal drugs such as cocaine and opium are routine methods to finance black ops, off-the-book operations hidden from oversight. In fact, some of the same people, Ledeen and Ghorbanifar, have themselves neck deep in the Niger forgeries, which acted as a central lie in the pre-war propaganda of weapons of mass destruction used as a pretext to wage preemptive war on Iraq. It is crucial for people to understand this because one of the reasons they reject conspiracy theories about 9/11 or about Iraq is because they just can't fathom that it could be done. They assume wrongly that the media would say something. Millions protested the war before the invasion and received virtually no coverage. That bubble has to be popped. The Iran-Contra scandal has since been admitted to. However, many of the people involved did not get in any real trouble. They were simply given presidential pardons, either by Bush Sr. or Bill Clinton. And the commission chosen to investigate the affair was actually chosen to cover it up. This pattern of crime and damage control continues. Take Brent Scowcroft, on the Tower Commission to investigate illegal arms sales, later chairman of the American Turkish Council, and involved in illegal arms trades himself. When patriots expose how blatantly obvious it is that there is a cover-up, regardless of how much evidence they have, the criminal's last refuge is to hide behind the stigma associated with conspiracy. They want you to ignore history in favor of belief based on authority. It is crucial for one to understand the national security state and its capacities before we talk about 9/11 and the lies about preemptive wars. A lead investigator into Iran-Contra gave most of the key suspects immunity. His name was Lee Hamilton. Lee Hamilton was later chosen to be part of the 9/11 Commission. The 9/11 Commission was a complete farce and a total whitewash. But we'll be digging into this bunch later. Let's just say Lee Hamilton had experience covering for the national security state. He didn't lose any sleep over helping the neocons where Cold Warrior meets Zionist fanatic. On the House Select Committee to investigate the illegal arms trades with Iran was the ranking Republican Dick Cheney, later made Secretary of Defense after the Senate refused to confirm John Tower of the Tower Commission whitewash. Dick Cheney, of course, would serve as vice president for George Bush's son, W., president during 9/11. These crooks continued to work in government regardless of what administration was in charge. And if you're still under the delusion that the left or right matter, you won't be by the end of this film. The CIA and Mossad have conducted countless covert operations and false flags, too many to name. Heads of state have been assassinated, puppets have been installed. The security state's personal interests are thinly cloaked under the guise of fighting communism, or now terrorism. But rest assured, the invasion of Afghanistan had nothing to do with looking for Osama bin Laden or 9/11, and invading Iraq even less. Invading Iraq under such a pretext, even if one swallowed the official version, would be as silly as invading Mexico after Pearl Harbor. Of course, one would think differently after watching the mass media in the run-up to the war. The press is a PR machine for the Pentagon. They acted as nothing but talking heads for Pentagon talking points. The state-run media, if it reports a scandal at all, reports a filtered version of it. And the state-run education, well, we're lucky if our kids can even speak their own native language. State deception and conspiracy isn't rare, it's normal. Blindly believing your TV is irresponsible and it's stupid. There is nothing kooky or funny about covert warfare and assassinations. It deserves open scrutiny and sincere investigation. To pretend that America's foreign policy is based on benevolence is outstandingly ignorant. To deny the actuality of covert actions and massive deception is equally as asinine. There are way too many counterexamples of successful conspiracies and hoax. For example, man-made global warming hype has been based on politics, not science. But look at how uniformly academia, the media, and the government work together on the myth. We're not just talking about hiding assassinations. The U.S. has been able to kill millions using covert warfare. See here John Stockwell talk about the CIA's secret wars on the Third World.
We launched the largest, this is something that Jimmy Carter did, Admiral Turner brags about it, the operation in Afghanistan. Biggest single operation, I'm told, in the history of the CIA's secret wars. And sure enough, very quickly we produced the Golden Crescent, which is still the largest source of heroin perhaps in the world today. Trying to summarize this Third World War that the CIA, the U.S. national security complex with the military all interwoven in it in many different ways, has been waging. Let me just put it this way. The best heads that I coordinate with studying this thing, we count at least minimum figure 6 million people who've been killed, and 6 million people who've been killed in this long 40-year war that we've waged against the people of the Third World.
Iran-Contra took the Kissinger model to new heights. Never had the military and intelligence agencies sought so many private sector sources of finance to such a degree. And in keeping with the distancing factor of the old British system of privateering, combined with the leverage of the global arms industry market, the U.S. had no shortage of willing partners to needlessly kill for profit. The fact that it was done showed a new step in the magnitude and capacity for multinational covert activities completely divorced from moral limits or even common interests other than profit. Israel's ability to completely control coverage of its crimes is important. 9/11 was immediately falsely linked to Iraq by Israel. And as you will see, the pre-invasion hype, the anthrax attacks, spies, and even 9/11 itself all link back to Israel. However, the U.S. was a willing partner. The U.S. wasn't fooled. It was fed a pretext, which it eagerly accepted. The plans for war, the Patriot Act, and massive profiteering had already been made and decided for years. The war in Iraq wasn't based on mistaken intelligence. It was based on lies, known deceptions. However, if a person relies only on television to tell them that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction and there never was any evidence for that claim, that the U.S. had no real interest in liberating the Kurds or allowing a legitimate democracy, that they planned perpetual war from the start, that permanent bases were always part of the agenda, and that intelligence agencies intentionally fostered religious infighting, even going as far as posing to be one faction while murdering another to set off cycles of revenge killings. Then they will always be in the dark, because this is not going to be on television. The media doesn't report it. The media is owned by the Pentagon. They have overlapping board of directorates. It is one large corporation. They lie. Iran-Contra was a conspiracy. John Poindexter was convicted of conspiracy. Here we have a massive geopolitical covert operation done by a faction within the American government concentrated in the office of the Vice President and the Department of Defense, working jointly with a faction in Israel to illegally sell arms and drugs in order to procure profits to pay off the Contras to fight the Sandinistas. And the entire time that the Americans and the Israelis are working together to do this, the Israelis were spying on the United States and stealing nuclear secrets. It wasn't until after Iran-Contra was busted that Jonathan Pollard was also ousted as a spy for Israel and thrown in jail. Later, in the build-up to 9/11, once again, we have a cabal within the U.S. concentrated in the office of the Vice President and the Defense Department, working with Israel to set up this event. And the entire time, again, Israel was spying on the United States and stealing nuclear technology. And then if that isn't enough, the same men that whitewashed the investigation into Iran-Contra were chosen again to whitewash the investigation into 9/11. That is why I'm bringing up Iran-Contra and Israel. People involved in Iran-Contra were also part of the continuity of government, an emergency backup government that became a shadow government. The Contra operation was run out of the office of the Vice President by former CIA Director George Bush Sr. George Bush Sr. was the director when the CIA was preparing intelligence cells in Pakistan and Afghanistan to fight a proxy war with the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. Call them modern privateers.
In the early 1980s, bin Laden worked with operatives from U.S. intelligence, the Pakistani military, and Arab states. They ran a wide-ranging covert network that recruited and financed Muslim fighters to battle the Soviet army.
These units were used again to finance 9/11 hijackers, who were under the protection by top officials of Chertoff and Goss, who intentionally stifled FBI attempts to investigate members of these cells, thus assuring 9/11's success. The question is, did the privateers double-cross the U.S. in a form of blowback, or was it jointly planned? It was planned and assisted. Not only were the bagmen who financed the operation protected, the hijackers themselves were relocated 2 steps ahead of the FBI, thanks to the Israelis' phone taps and monitoring of both the feds and the hijackers themselves.
Some American terrorism investigators fear certain suspects in the September 11th attacks may have managed to stay ahead of them by knowing who and when investigators are calling on the telephone.